The bid price tab has three subtabs. You have select overhead, profit, and material, direct cost detail, and bid price detail. Let's start at the select overhead, profit, and material. The top left section, you'll see that it says overhead. Overhead is the cost to operate your company. You need to select how to calculate your company's overhead cost. We have different choices. You can do by specific category. So if you want to enter in a percentage for each of our five major categories, you can do that. And if you're using a billable rate per hour for your manpower, where you're using, say, 75 bucks an hour, that's what you bill out your customers, that's fine, but in here you would just leave labor zero if that $75 an hour already includes overhead. You can also choose to use a percentage of your estimated prime cost. With the estimated prime cost, if you know what your cost has been for a period of time, let's say a year, you're able to go back into your records and determine your total cost for that year. Once you back out all of your direct related job expenses, your material, your labor, anything directly related to completing work on projects, you back that out. What's left is the cost of running your company. So if you can determine what percentage that represents of your entire cost, so your entire cost was $100,000 and $10,000 was used to run your company, well, then you know that the percentage of estimated prime would be 10%. So you can do it that way. You can also choose to use a rate per hour. There is a calculator that we have. If we click this on the calculator, what you're going to do is go through the calculator. You'll enter in the number of employees whose labor is chargeable. That's going to be on the jobs working. Put in that quantity. You want to put in what are their available working hours per year. So how many days in a normal week, how many hours in a normal day, and that's going to give you your potential hours. And typically there's 2,080 potential working hours in a year. But your guys aren't going to work 2,080 hours. So in step 3, you're going to start subtracting hours based upon the time they're going to have off. So holidays, sick days, uh, anything. You just want to bring it down. So you can see just by these numbers we have in here, we've calculated that our employees will typically work 1,937 hours in the year. But adjust that to fit your company. Then you want to go through step 4, which is accounting for your overhead cost. And we've put down major categories that you'll probably have an expense for. Accounting, advertising, bank charges, depreciation. You can read them, but just go into the cell and enter in your cost for those items. Then you'll also notice at the end we have empty spaces. So you can double click into these and type in your own unique expense and put in the values. Now what's going to happen, it's going to total all of your expenses, and then it's going to divide it by the number of hours that you are able to bill out. In this case here, if we take a look, we have 2 employees. Both of those employees were designated to work 1,900 hours. So it would be 2 times the 1,900 hours. So we're looking at a little over 3,800 hours. So that's what's going to be divided. You'll take your total cost, 38,000 divided by 3,800 hours, and that's where we're coming up with the $10 per hour. And this is a really a great tool. You'll notice and play around with it as you bring on manpower, or if you fire manpower. So if you're increasing or decreasing your workforce, if you keep your overhead cost stable, if your overhead cost is the same and you actually add a man where you're billing out more hours, you're going to see that your overhead cost per hour is going to decrease. So keep an eye on this. It's really a great tool. Keep an eye on it as you hire guys or bring in more office people. If you increase your overhead, keep it up to date. But it's a great tool. Charging a rate per hour is really a good way to go. That way you're not, if you're going to do a percentage of estimated prime cost, sometimes it can be a little bit skewed if you include material, really expensive material. Maybe you're going to have a $20,000 generator package. Well, you're really kind of going to overweight your overhead if you're charging 10% of everything. But if it's based upon hours, because overhead is oftentimes related to management of manpower. So rate per hour, check it out. Or you can always choose to do a lump sum. If you want to put in $500, and you can do it for tab 1 and or tab 2. Well, one thing I want to point out that I didn't mention in the overhead video, in your bid price tab, you have a drop down for estimate. So this is going to list all of the estimates that you've created within the project. That allows you to have different settings for different estimates if you need it. I mean, typically it's going to be the same settings, but maybe not for overhead and profit. You also have a takeoff drop down to where it's going to show your different takeoffs, whether it's your takeoff tab 1, takeoff tab 2, or your option tabs. So you can also have different settings for your option tabs. But let's get into profit. Now with profit, you can choose to calculate your profit by specific category. So you can have different percentages if you wish for our 5 different major cost categories. And labor, if you're using a manpower in your bid, that represents a billable rate per hour. That includes overhead and profit. If that's the case, then you would want to use by a specific category to calculate your profit. You would want to make profit on everything other than your labor because your billable rate per hour already includes your profit. Okay, so that's specific category. You can also do a percentage of break even. So if your break even cost, everything it's going to cost you to do the entire project is $10,000, and you say, well, I want to make 18% on this job. That would be percent of break even. Or, and typically that's what you're going to use. Or you could use lump sum if you just want to put in a lump sum profit amount for tab 1 and or tab 2. You can do that as well, and that will be a dollar amount, so $500, $1,000. So that's your profit. All right, the miscellaneous section of your bid price tab, this allows you to adjust each estimate to account for various factors. So remember, like I said, you have the estimate drop down, so you can set different miscellaneous adjustments for each estimate, as well as each takeoff. So if you have option tabs, optional sunroom, optional whatever, you can have separate values for that as well. The first adjustment that you can make is miscellaneous material. There's a few different ways you can use this. Number one would be when you select your material price for your estimate. In this case here, we have target price, and target price is a national average. It's not exactly your vendor pricing. If you've investigated, if you've printed out your material list and you've determined that the target price seems to be a certain percentage higher or a certain percentage lower than what you typically pay at your supply house, well then come on in here and make an adjustment. If you feel the material is 3% too high, do minus 3%. That will bring it down to your vendor level. Now, one other thing you could do, let's say that you've printed out your material and you want to get a quote for your material list. You can do that as well. If you want to just use the cost of material from a quote and you don't want to use the material pricing that's in TurboBid, that's fine. What you would do minus 100% So minus 100%, that's going to zero out the material cost in TurboBid. You'll make it 0. And then go ahead and enter in your quote amount. So it's going to zero out the TurboBid material pricing, and it will enter in your quote pricing. So that's another thing you could do. You can also use miscellaneous material, tab 1 and tab 2, just a dollar amount, like the quote amount we're entering in the dollar amount for tab 1. You can enter for tab 1 and or tab 2. So if you just want to add anything, and it could be, let's say, a light fixture quote, so you still want to use the material in TurboBid, so that's fine. You wouldn't do a minus in the percentage, but you want to add in a quoted package, well, you can do that as well. Now, in the future, we will have drop downs like we have for our labor hour adjustments where you can designate what the miscellaneous material or any of these is actually representing. You can have different line items, but for now, what you can do, I would suggest we have a icon up here, project notes. I would go ahead and open up the project notes, and you can see we already made project notes for this project because when you open it up, it's for the project that you're in. And that's actually, I'm glad I brought this up. Use your project notes during the estimate. If you're doing an estimate and you have questions, if you have concerns, or you want to make yourself a note, do that in project notes. And then at the end of a project, make sure that you review your project notes, that you have everything answered. You can print this out, put it in the job file. You can see here we have pertinent information we need to be able to reference. A lot of this information here is from the notes on the blueprint to make sure we're doing things correctly. But anyways, what I was going to get at, if you have multiple quotes that you want to add into an estimate, well, you can do that in here too. So if you wanted to say miscellaneous material, we could say fixtures and then put in the price. So then you have a reference of what the amounts in your miscellaneous adjustments represent. So that's miscellaneous material. Waste and theft, if you want to put in a small percentage to account for waste. You know, are you guys pretty wasteful? Do they leave a lot of wire at the end of the spool and throw it away rather than trying to be conservative and use them for pigtails and whatnot? Are you on a type of job where material just mysteriously seems to walk off of the job? Well, put in a percentage, add it. Or you can do a dollar amount into tab 1 and or tab 2. Miscellaneous direct job expenses. You do have a section, remember in your direct cost, you do have a section for miscellaneous direct job expenses, but now anything in there is project level. If you want to assign individual or specific miscellaneous job expenses to specific estimates, remember you have the estimate drop down, then you can do that in here. So if you have a cost for one of the estimates that doesn't apply to another one, do it specifically in the miscellaneous adjustment section. All right, now we get into the labor hour adjustments. You have multiple areas that you can adjust labor. You can make global adjustments. Remember, you can do global adjustments in Edit, Program Options, and Labor Unit Adjustments. So if you find that the labor units seem to be running a little bit high or a little bit low for your company, remember the labor units represent normal commercial work, but maybe you're super efficient and the labor units we use seem to be 5% too high. Well, you can just do minus 5%, and then once you hit OK, it's going to go into every item in the entire database and reduce that labor unit by 5%. So that's a global adjustment. Or if you don't do commercial work, you just do residential, well, reduce it down. I would suggest start out at maybe minus 25% to account for the faster pace of residential. So that's what global will do. You have to have the ability to make the labor units in a program work for you, for your company. So that's one of the areas for labor unit adjustments. Another is in your Estimate Info tab where you're selecting the type of work. Um, Labor units are right now set for normal commercial. If you're doing a residential job, well, adjust the labor units. It's a faster pace. But you get the idea. Different types of work you're making an adjustment for. That's another area. In your takeoff for select columns, you actually have the ability to adjust your labor on a column by column basis. So if you have different areas of the project, of the estimate, different rooms, you're in a warehouse and it has 20-foot ceilings. Well, you can, for that one column, you can adjust the ceiling labor. Whereas other rooms in that estimate, maybe the break room, you're not going to have that issue. So you can adjust labor units on a column by column basis in your takeoff. And then the other area for adjustment would be labor hour adjustments. Let's say that job factors. For whatever reason, on this particular job, you think that you need to adjust the labor. It can be a PETA factor. Maybe the contractor is just a pain, and if I'm going to get this job, I'm going to make it worth my while. I want to bump up the labor by 10%. You can do that. You can do a fixed dollar amount too. If you wanted to add in not a dollar amount, but fixed hours. If you've taken a look at the total hours for the job, and they've come out to be 50 hours, and you're scratching your head saying, man, I don't know. I know that's what it's coming out to be, but I'm going to be way more comfortable if I just add 10 more hours to it. So you can do that. You can do a combination of percentage and hours, or just hours. And if you think about it, different factors on a job can make a difference. Weather and humidity. If you know that it's just going to be brutally cold during this project, you're going to lose productivity. If your guys are exposed to the elements, you're going to lose productivity. So account for it. So in this weather and humidity, we can say we're going to bump it up 3%. Now you have the link here, labor hour adjustment. If you click on that, that's where you can edit what we have in the drop-down or add new items to the drop-down. So it's going to total up your total labor hour adjustments. So we can see we're going to increase the labor. And this is just the labor for the takeoff. It's only going to adjust the labor from the material in your takeoff, nothing else. So if you have additional labor and direct costs, it's not going to affect that. It's only going to affect the material labor hours. So it's going to show you your total labor hour adjustments percentage as well as the total hours it's going to add into the job. Now, one other thing that you can do, remember in the miscellaneous material where we wanted to use a quote, or if you just want to enter in a dollar amount, you don't want to use the material cost from within TurboBid. So you could do minus 100 and then go ahead and enter in the material cost that you want it to be. You can do the same thing in your labor hour adjustments. Oh, to delete items, you just left click on select and then right click and then hit delete. Let's say that we want to do the same thing with labor, that we want to enter in the hours. We don't necessarily want to use the labor from within TurboBids from calculated from the takeoff. So you could also do a minus 100% and then put in the hours that you want. So if you basically wanted to do a T&M, if you know your T&M, if you know your time is going to be 30 hours, put it in. If you know your material is going to be $250, but just do a minus 100% for both material and labor, that's going to zero out the material cost from the estimate and, well, from the takeoff and the labor from the takeoff, so you can put that in. Now, you have 3 different links in your bid price tab in the select overhead profit and material. Format how the bid price is broken into draws. That's where you're going to tell the program if your bid price is $10,000, how do you want to break it up in your bid price report to your customer? Break it up. I want this much for down payment, this much for service, this much for rough trim, and so on. You can access that from your reports tab as well, so we'll do that a little bit later. Same with the third one here, the select the text that explains the standalone pricing of quotes and options. That's a mouthful. That is also in the format bid price from within the reports tab. The one I do want to show you is combine multiple estimates into a total bid price. What this is going to do is it's going to list each estimate that's in the project. We only have one in this project, and that's the custom home per room. And it's actually going to say model, that's an estimate. What you would use this for, you have a condo building. Floor plan A, floor plan B, floor plan C, those are all different estimates. Common area. It would show all of those in here. You can have different options for each one. Optional floor layouts. You can have fixture packages, any quotes, but it's going to show you all of those. What this will allow you to do is show your customer a combined bid price. If this were floor plan A, you could say, okay, I've got 5 of those in the building. If this were floor plan B, you could say, I've got 4 of those in the building. One common area. Whatever it is, whatever you check and then put in the quantity in your bid price report you send to your customer, it's going to show that. So it would show 5 of these models at X or at a certain cost, and then it's going to total all of them together. So it would show your customer what your total combined bid price would be for the entire project. They're going to see pricing for individual estimates, but this allows you to combine it into one overall grand bid price. Let's finish up on this tab here. Select material vendor. Just check the radio button of your vendor. Now, remember, in every item, you can have up to 5 different vendors. If you've chosen to use a vendor and an item in this estimate does not include a vendor price, you just didn't get a price for a specific item yet, what the program's going to do, actually let's do it. Let's select vendor 1 and let's say we're going to move on. I'm going to hit the next tab. What the program's doing, it's going to look at all of the material in the estimate, and it's going to look to see if there's a price for your selected vendor. If it finds any material that is missing pricing, you're going to get this little pop-up saying that you're missing pricing. Just click on the view report, and it's going to generate a list of the material that's missing pricing. So you can see here's the item. This is the TurboBid item number 1027, the description, and vendor 1 pricing. That's what we had selected, vendor 1. So the program's not going to allow you to include any material that you hadn't gotten around to getting a price for yet. So if you're using a vendor, you don't have to worry about missing pricing. If you get anything that has 0 price, just export this to Excel and send it to your vendor and ask them, hey, can you do me a favor and in this Excel spreadsheet, right to the right of the description, put in my pricing. You get it back. You would just go to your item database, go to search, type in the item number 1027, hit enter. It will take you right to that item, then enter in the vendor price. Let's go back to this tab. So that's select vendor. Enter in your sales tax. What tax do you pay your vendor for sales tax? Put that in. And then go over this once on how you typically want it to be for all of your estimates. Set your overhead, set your profit, any miscellaneous stuff that you always want a project to use. Then go ahead and click on the Apply Settings to New Projects, and then any new projects that you create will automatically start with these settings. You can change them on an individual job, but unless you click on the Apply Settings to New Projects button, it won't change it for new projects. Now, another sub-tab of your bid price tab is the direct cost detail. Now, the direct cost detail, you're not going to enter in any values. You're going to use it to analyze your estimate numbers. Just you want to look for anything that doesn't look quite right. You can look at the percentages that are listed on the right-hand side to make sure they're in line with the percentages of the same type of jobs. But the way that it's set up, you have values for each tab. It's going to list the name of the tab. If you rename the takeoff tabs, it's going to display the name. So here we have per plan. Next to it, we have value engineered. And then to the right are the combined totals, the totals for tab 1 and 2 combined. In each one of these, you have the three major categories of cost for a job: material, labor, and miscellaneous expenses. It's going to display the major areas of each of those cost categories. So in material, you have your material cost, miscellaneous material, waste and theft, sales tax, labor, your direct labor, that's your pay rate, and it's going to show the hours from the material in your takeoff. So if you added up all of the hours from our assemblies and the takeoff, added them together, it's going to be 109 hours for this job. So it's going to show you the hours times your average pay rate for the crew. Same thing with your burden, your total installation hours times your average burden rate for the crew. If you had a future pay rate increase, it would show you what the amount that's being added would be here. Skill level. We have an apprentice in this estimate, and the apprentice is, well, actually, let's take a look. If you click on any of these descriptions, they're links. They're blue and they're underlined, so they're links. It will take you to the source of that data. So let's click on skill level adjustment. It's going to take us to our screen where we've selected what manpower is on the job. And here you can see we have first year trainee at 50% skill level. So in your bid price tab, it's showing you how many hours are being added to the job to make up for his lack of productivity. So the job is now going to take an additional 21.95 hours because you have that apprentice on there. Additional labor, labor hour adjustments, all of these are links, so you can click on them. But really use this as an analytical tool. Just make sure everything looks correct. The third sub-tab of your bid price tab is titled Bid Price Detail. Now, here it's going to summarize the information that was in the direct cost detail. So you have your material cost, total labor, and total miscellaneous expenses. That equals your estimated prime cost. You want to calculate your overhead on top of that estimated prime cost. So here you see we have overhead. It's calculating the overhead. We had used a rate per hour, so it's multiplied that rate times the hours. It will also break it down over on the right hand side and show you what percentage it's representing for this job. And add that together, add your estimated prime cost to your overhead cost, and that's going to equal your estimated break-even cost. This is what you need to get for the job just to break even. So this is a really key number. This is going to show you, when you do a job, if you think about it, when you actually do a job, it's costing you money. You're spending money to do a job for somebody. You need to make sure that you're not charging less than that because you will lose money. Anything above it, you'll make money, you'll make profit. So you want to add your profit on top of your estimated break even. Here we had 11.11%. selected in the Select Overhead Profit and Material tab. That's going to equal $1,236. So you're going to add those two together, your break even plus your profit, to arrive at your bid price. So this is what you're going to sell the job for. Now you have numbers for each of your two tabs. You have tab 1 and tab 2. And the heading for each of these is going to be what the tab was renamed. And then you have the total for tabs 1 and tab 2 combined. To the right of the totals, it's going to show you percentages. So use that as a analytical. If you're used to certain types of jobs having a certain percentage of material versus labor versus miscellaneous expenses, take a look at that. Make sure that those are in line. You're basically looking for red flags that might indicate that there's an issue that you need to check and resolve. Now, a couple things you can do in this tab. You can override your profit for either one of these tabs. So in your select profit, overhead profit material tab, we've selected 11%, and that's going to use 11% for both tabs. Now you can choose to use a different percentage for one or both of these tabs. You would just check the override button and then put in the amount that you want to use. So this allows you to have different profit amounts. And where this would come in handy, possibly if you're doing, let's say you're doing value engineering, and obviously we didn't complete the value engineering takeoff tab for this estimate, but let's say we use tab 2 for value engineering, and the cost came up to be an additional $100 for value engineering. Well, maybe you want to bump up that profit a little bit because maybe it's a little bit more work involved. Maybe you have to make sure that your guys get red line prints. So it could be a little more work involved. So go ahead and check that and then enter in a higher profit percentage. Or change orders. Change orders or walkthroughs definitely bump up your profit on those. So if you're using tab 1 to represent your original bid, and then tab 2 you're using for a change order, that's great. Just in tab 2, then jack up that profit. You can get away with it. You need to make money. You need to survive and be successful. So that's override profit. Now you also have overrides for your bid price. Here we have a bid price of $12,370, and maybe I think, well, you know what, I know that's the calculated price, but I'm going to go ahead and have my bid price be $12,500. So just check the checkbox, enter in your amount, and you need to click into another cell. So I'm just going to click into the cell above it to complete the entry. Now you can see my bid price is $12,500, and they're highlighted different colors so you know visually that that's an override price. So you can override tab 1 and or tab 2. All right, and there again, for change orders, for walkthroughs, you don't even have to worry about adjusting the profit. Just adjust your bid price. Take it up to the point you know you can get away with it. If you uncheck the box, then your bid price will go back to the calculated price. Now we also have a section here, bid analysis. The bid analysis, it's going to list your square footage, and that square footage is coming from your estimate info tab. This is a link here, so if you have forgotten to enter it in but you would like to see it, just click on the link and it takes you back to the source where you enter in your square footage. It's already highlighted for you, so just type in the number. But it's going to break down your bid price into a cost per square foot. Don't ever estimate using a cost per square foot, but it is a good analytical tool. You want to make sure that similar jobs are coming out at somewhat in the same area for cost per square foot. There again, use it for a red flag. Total labor hours. This is the hours for the entire job. It's going to include basically your hours for the material installation. So you can see that in your direct cost detail tab, 109 hours. It's going to add in your skill level adjustment hours, additional labor hour adjustments. It's going to calculate all of this and enter that into your total labor hours. Now, keep an eye on this. This is really important. Keep an eye on it, and after you've actually completed the job, come back and see how it compared with your estimated hours. And if you see that there's a trend that the estimated hours are continually and consistently either a little high or a little bit low, that's where you need to make some adjustments then. If you're being consistent and you're adding in the correct amount or the same type of additional labors, if you're being consistent with that, if you're being consistent with any of the make sure you're doing your selected type of work, making those adjustments. In your takeoff for your select columns, that you're being consistent with adjusting labor hours for certain conditions. Look at all of those. If you're being consistent with that stuff, in your last place to look for labor adjustments. And that's a great thing with TurboBid. We really give you the ability to adjust the job to be very, very accurate and to account for different fluctuations and different environments, and to be able to account for adjustments. But the last place would be your labor hour adjustments. If you're being consistent with all of those and your labor hours are still consistently coming out high or low, that's when you know that you can go ahead and make a global adjustment to your material labor units. So not everybody's different, or everybody is different. Every company's different. They operate at different efficiencies. So you need to fine tune the labor units in TurboBid to fit your company. And that's once again where you would go to Edit, Program Options, Labor Unit Adjustment. So if you see that these labor hours are consistently coming out a percentage high or a percentage low, make an adjustment, either a negative to reduce the hours or just a regular number to increase the labor hours by a selected percentage. And remember, this is global, so this will globally go into every item in the database and make that adjustment. It's also going to show you the number of 8-hour days to help for scheduling. And not just scheduling, but if you know that you have a certain amount of time in that schedule, your builder's giving you a certain amount of time to complete your work, well, look at how many days it's coming out to be. And that way, if you say, well, he's not giving me that much time, or if you want to take more time, you can see the days are calculated by the manpower that you had selected. So if you need to adjust it, you can just click on the link, go back to your manpower, and adjust the manpower that you have on the job. All right, and then it's also going to show the total 5-day weeks. So that's your bid price detail. And remember, with any of these bid price tabs, you toggle through your different estimates in the project with your drop downs here. So you can see different values for different estimates, as well as your different takeoff tabs, whether it's your tabs 1 and 2 or any option tabs that you've created.